I'd like to call the July meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to order. Paula, would you please call the roll?
Alan Brown. Jennifer Bourne.
Present.
Heather Clemmer.
Present.
Neela Craig-Clement.
Present.
Greg Eddington. George Massey.
Present.
Mary Jo Meacham.
Present.
Jeffrey Parks.
Present.
Ann Zacharitz.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Briefly to go over meeting procedures, the chairman, I'm acting as chairman today, will announce each case and ask any party having an interest in the case to indicate their presence by raising their hand. Commissioners, we will then discuss the details of the case, calling on staff to provide details of the proposal. Following the discussion, we may choose to ask questions of the applicant, the staff, or other interested parties. Interested persons may speak to support or protest the application. The applicant will be entitled to one brief rebuttal. Interaction between applicant and protestants on the floor is not permitted. Try and keep things organized. Persons speaking are asked to approach the center podium one at a time to introduce themselves by name and address and to present their position as succinctly as possible. The Commission asks each speaker to limit his or her remarks to no more than 5 minutes. Following the public hearing on an application, the Commission will take one of the following actions. 1, approve the certificate of appropriateness. 2, continue the proposal. 3, deny the proposal with prejudice, which means that the application may not be resubmitted for at least 1 year unless the Commission determines the circumstances have changed. Or 4, deny the proposal without prejudice, which means that the applicant may reapply at any time. When the application has been approved, and after a 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the certificate of appropriateness to the applicant, and city construction permits cannot be issued without until the CA has been issued. Any person aggrieved by a decision granting or denying a CA may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the Board of Adjustment. All right, from the Office of Historic Preservation Officer, Katie.
We announced at the last meeting, but we'll repeat that we're going to be having a half-day session of camp. It's Commission Assistance and Mentoring Program. Sorry, forgot the acronym for a minute there. Friday, September 11th. Everyone's already been emailed to RSVP, and we'll keep you posted on details about that. And then just to announce again, and we'll probably take this off after this month or the next, that we are no longer being broadcast live, but the meetings are still being recorded and will be available online for people to go and watch the recording of the meeting after the fact. We're just not on TV as we speak. So that's all I have.
All right. Thank you. Acceptance of the meeting minutes of the previous meeting. Anyone have any comments or corrections from the June 16th special meeting?
I move to approve the June 16th meeting minutes.
Second.
With a motion and a second, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Code enforcement report. The report is in your packet. Is there anyone from this code enforcement with us today? Can anyone have any comments for staff on the code enforcement report?
Katie, there was one we had discussed on the 400 block of 22nd Street. Do you know any update on that? I think you said they had received a citation. I think it was 405, I think it was. Neela, you remember that?
Do what?
The one we were talking about?
Yeah. The outbuilding?
Yes.
What about the window? Was that also reported?
I had spoken with Katie about that. Previously, there were no citations against the home.
Okay.
When it was listed,
Right.
This outbuilding came afterward.
Yes.
So I'm not sure what, do you have an update on that?
I do not know the current status, but I'll check on it and
Okay.
let you know.
Thank you.
Anything else on code enforcement? Great. Moving on, any continuance announcements or requests that are new?
None in the agenda and no new requests. We also have no dilapidated structures and no National Register nominations this month.
Right. Moving onward, no cases on the consent docket this month. We will jump straight into cases for individual consideration then. Case number 1.
HPCA 15-00076 at 427 Northwest 19th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Matt Link and Emily Blaschke for a certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish garage elective, and 2, construct addition with deck elective. And I passed out some additional copies of Sanborn maps because I think those didn't make it into your staff report. So,
Okay. Staff had recommended approval on item 1, demolish garage, and a continuance on item 2 for construct addition with deck. We want to take them one at a time. Anyone have any initial comments or questions on item 1, demolish garage?
Are we taking, what did you say? Are we talking about demolishing the garage first?
Yes,
Could we talk about the other one first?
if you want to. I was just taking them in numerical order.
Okay.
That made some sense, but we can
I'm only
just-
saying that
up to
because
you.
I think it kind of follows the construction, in my opinion.
Okay.
I do have some comments unless anybody else has a comment. Oh, y'all are bad. My comments are in regard to kind of general, and we had more than one addition today, but it's basically on, the guidelines 4.3, the building additions. And so I just went through and I feel like I'm finding some things that are not really appropriate for the guidelines, which would start kind of at 4.3.6. And maybe, I think sometimes it's confusing because we've done a lot of new construction, and it seems to be more like historic buildings, but when additions come, we're supposed to be looking at something that's visibly distinguishable from the original historic building, so that we see connections between the two so that we don't confuse what is historic and what is new. That we look to do that by different ways, either by design or materials. And then I think, too, not so much on this one, but I still would like to have this be under consideration, the design of the garage versus the, existing design, not the garage, the roof line. So those are some of my feelings that are some of my thoughts as far as part of the guidelines that we should be looking at, and then that would be really in regard to the 2 side elevations. Both sides just appear to be coming out of the original house without being different from the original, and then using the same materials. So I know sometimes it appears to be a good idea to have the materials match the original, but it's not necessarily doesn't follow the guidelines. When it does match so much that we could not distinguish the original from the addition. So those are some of my comments.
I agree with Mary Jo. Guideline 4.3.6 seems pretty clear in the language. In addition to a historic building must. We don't see that often in the guidelines, but there's no way around that, I don't think. So I think a redesign to show the differentiation, visible differentiation on the sides would be appropriate.
Is the applicant present? You want to address any of this or all of this? Or? Okay, great. Come on up.
My name is Andrew Thomas. I'm an architect here in Oklahoma City, and I represent the Links on this project. And I'm aware of your concerns, and I appreciate them. And I have done a redesign that I brought with me to go ahead and make a modification on both sides of the addition where we would recess it in 1 foot 2 inches and then come straight out. And it doesn't change really the interior, what we were hoping to do. It won't affect that at all. And it will make a demarcation line between the new and the old. So if I could approach and pass this out.
Sure, if you want to pass it out. I think that the rest of the commission can chime in. I think that we would not be in a position to make a decision on that today, having just received it today, but I think we'd be happy to look at it and maybe give you some feedback on that, if that's a good direction for you.
This is the one. 1 foot 2 inches. Did you have any, did you think about any changes to the siding, how you would make sure that the new addition was known in the future? I mean, do you see what we're saying is that we just don't want to have it confused as part of the original? We want it to be compatible. I know it's it's a hard design thing to get to sometimes.
And I think that you have, two choices. You can either try to make it look very, very much different from the original and possibly risk having a possibly very unattractive building, or we can look at a shingle style, or I'm just not even, I haven't really put too much more thought into it. I'd like it to be able to be as close to the original as possible if there's any way to do that. But I think the links are very open to any modification that, to the exterior that might help that.
Well, and Mary Jo, I guess when I think about it, sometimes we've got additions to brick houses that we come in with, wood siding or something like that. When the house itself is wood siding, I wonder what the appropriate other thing that the addition would be other than maybe the wood siding itself. So.
I don't want to really give design decision. I mean, it could be a different size of wood, a different width of wood. It could be instead of wood, it could be hardy plank. I mean, I'm just, it could be all those things. I'm not saying it should be or it could be. I'm just saying that.
Well, I'm just trying to think of what the possible path forward would be other than the siding that kind of looks like it belongs with the existing. And I was
I'm
struggling
reluctant
with it,
to actually, make a design suggestion because I think that it is difficult, but there has to be some, research, creativity. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's got to be distinctive, in my opinion. But I think that the setback is a good start, but it does say, it still refers to the materials in the guidelines, doesn't it?
So 4.3.11 says use of different but compatible materials or different simplified detailing is also appropriate to differentiate a new addition from the historic building. The guideline before that says that additions should be clearly secondary to and distinct from the original building. This can be accomplished by providing a clear visual break between the historic building and the addition, by setting the facade of the addition back, or by constructing a recessed area at the point at which the addition and historic building join together. Whether it's right or wrong, I think the Commission has previously approved additions that kept the same materials but set in or had a break in the roof line or had some other break in the form but had the same materials. And I think there's probably different ways to go about that.
Right. And so, that's just my comment there. I appreciate you doing the inset, and I think that solves the majority of the issue for me. But I'll just say this again, is that we have other, this is just wood. There's lots of different, and my remarks are really in general to building additions that I feel like the guidelines are leading us to try to approve things that are distinctly different but compatible so that we do not confuse people in that what was original and what is built at a later date. Even the pattern of the boards, putting a break board with two different sizes of siding. There's lots of different ways to be distinctly different. So. I just don't want to, I just do not feel like that in every case we should just go back to, yes, we've approved things that are exactly identical to the existing materials, because that leads us in a way that we have to approve other projects that are trying to use the very same material on an addition. That's all.
Any other comments?
So I guess what Mary Jo's saying is, let's say we had a brick home that wanted to add an addition. Typically, that's done with hardy plank or wood siding. Would we allow a brick home to build a brick addition? I don't know.
I think with a proper inset, I think we would. I mean, we're differentiating it by moving it in, and you've done that in your redesign. That's enough to convince me.
I think I agree with that. I think that the inset answers that guideline that says that you must differentiate it.
On the side elevations, let's see, which one was it? Did the neighborhood suggest any additional windows?
Yes, the comments from the neighborhood said that the west facade of the new construction needs something, windows, to make it more interesting. There's no delineation between old and new.
That would be on the west elevation where there's just the one high window, and then,
Right.
is it because you are needing a flat wall there for interior reasons?
Generally so, and
Sir, if you could step up. Yes, thank you.
generally so. That's kind of why we have that idea. And those windows are basically into our neighbor's driveway back there. But if it was something where our formal living is now, there are a couple of, clear story type windows that flank the fireplace. And if it was something like that, I mean, that would still work well with our design too. And if it provided additional interest, I have no opposition to adding windows or providing extra interest.
And are you Mr. Link?
Yes.
Okay, great. If I could get you to sign in
Okay,
too, before
thanks.
you step away. Thanks. All right. Any additional comments or questions?
I think that was just the second thing that the neighborhood had suggested, the delineation and then the addition of windows on that side. I think we've suggested in the past that we've added windows so that we'd have a more compatible elevation.
Less of such a blank facade. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So then maybe we're suggesting it be continued, add some windows on the west elevation to add more interest, and then we like the inset.
The inset as provided is going to be a good
The inset
direction.
as provided, yeah.
Okay. So we're looking to continue this item?
So the next available meeting is August 5th. We would need revised documents by Tuesday of next week,
Okay.
which it sounds like you've already done quite a bit of work, so that seems
Sure.
pretty doable.
Okay.
Okay. I would move to continue HPCA 15-00076 to the August 5th meeting.
Second.
Moving both items,
I'm sorry.
or just the addition? Do we want to talk about the demolition today?
Oh, okay, maybe we should talk about the demolition, yeah.
You could just continue this one.
Okay, let's continue item 2 to construct addition with deck.
Second.
A motion and a second to continue item 2 to the August meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Okay. Let's talk about the garage proposed for demolition.
Could I ask you, if you demolish the garage and leave the one at the back, are you going to build another garage in the future?
No, we have the portico that we park under, and the garage really doesn't serve much purpose for us. It's pretty narrow. We don't really park in there, and it takes up kind of a huge volume of the backyard. So that's kind of our feeling on the garage.
Katie, if they sold the property in the future and you took the square footage or the footprint of the addition plus the existing outbuilding that you're keeping, would there still be room for somebody to construct a garage on the site?
The proposed, the proposed site plan that shows the shadow, it's on page 15 of your staff report, shows the, the addition with the deck, shows the footprint of the existing garage. So there's just a tiny bit of room between those two. The deck would certainly render at least one side of the garage not usable.
I mean, if they tore the garage down now and just left the outbuilding, and then later somebody wanted to come in and build a garage, would they have to tear down the outbuilding in order to get the square footage? Or would they be left, I'm just...
Oh, like would we
Approve?
consider it?
Based on the square footage?
I don't know if I can answer that. I think the existing building is not currently a garage. It's not really clear if it was ever intended to. It doesn't look like it
I'm
was
not
ever built
opposed to
as
its
a garage.
demolition. I'm just wondering if somebody came back in the future, will they be in a position where they could not put a garage because the addition would take up the square footage and the percentage would be too small? Anyway,
Yeah.
that's all.
I am very, very familiar with this house. A good friend of mine and her daughter lived
sorry.
in it, and I was involved. Oh, sorry,
Shannon.
Shannon Rundle.
Thank you.
431 Northwest 20th, Heritage Hills Preservation Review Committee. That garage, when it was built, it's of course not historic, and it was built so far over into the yard that it splits the backyard. It's just ridiculously large. And there is room, I believe, to build a garage closer to the fence line on the way all the rest on the block are. This one is not where it should have been built. And the storage building at the back is a nice little building, but it is very, very small. And I think that there's space between the storage building and the present garage so that somebody could move a garage back, move it over, and it would just be a better site on the property for a garage than where it is now.
I'm in agreement. I just wonder if our percentage of land use that we have would allow for another building after the addition takes up so much room. That's all. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't sound like staff can answer it right now unless Angela has a...
The city allows a 25% open space is a requirement. So if they have a front yard, they have 25% open space, so they would be in good shape.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions or comments on the garage? Or desire for some sort of action?
I move to approve HPCA 15-0076, Item 1, with the specific findings that are stated, 1 through 4, and that the proposed work will not have an adverse effect on the historic character of the district or property and complies with all relevant guidelines and sections of the Municipal Code 2010, as referenced in Section C of the staff report.
I second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, that completes case number D1. All right, thank you. Next case.
HPCA 15-00077 at 624 Northwest 15th, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Jeffrey LeBeau by Derek Bird for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace front porch slab and stairs, elective; 2, install new porch roof, columns, and railing, elective; 3, install new door surround, elective; and 4, repair masonry, elective.
Thank you. And staff had recommended approval of all items, but had some conditions on those approvals. Any initial comments or questions from the commission?
Could Katie just explain her conditions easier?
Yes. So the applicant believes that the height of the porch as it currently is might not be the historic height, and that once they start doing some demolition on the existing porch, they expect to find some physical evidence that tells them what the original porch height was. They were hoping the commission would approve the application and allow them to come back to staff with final dimensions for the height. So we had conditions in there to allow that, and also to make clear that if those come back and are dramatically different from what we anticipate, we might have it come back to the full commission.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi, Derek Bird, Gummerson and Associates, 4019 North Classen.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for the applicants? And did you have any questions or concerns about the conditions that staff had recommended?
No.
Okay.
Then
I'm sorry. I move to approve HPCA 15-00077, items 1, 2, 3, and 4, with the following conditions noted by staff, that, let's see, that after the porch floor is removed, that they will consult with staff to determine the height of the porch, and if there's a significant difference, they may be, they may have to come back to the commission.
The site, if you look at the concrete cap, there are actually scuppers on the brick where it appears that water was at one time coming out, and then they just put sand and then capped it off with a concrete cap. It's kind of hard to tell from the photos there, but I think that once we start demolition, it'll be pretty obvious.
And with the specific findings that the proposed work with the agreed-upon conditions will not have an adverse effect, and the items will comply with all relevant guidelines and sections of the code. 2010 is referenced in section C or D of the staff report.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Meacham and a second from Commissioner Bourne. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Great. Thank you. All right, next case.
HPCA 15-00079 at 916 Northwest 16th Street, Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Justin and Courtney Coffey by Catherine Montgomery of Preservation and Design Studio for certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish garage elective, and 4, construct new garage elective. And the applicant submitted some additional comments, and those are, I believe, at all of your seats, and were also distributed by email today.
And staff had recommended continuances on both items in this case. Great.
Hi, I'm Justin Coffey. I'm the homeowner, here to answer any questions you guys have.
Great, thank you. Any initial comments or questions from the commission?
I like the design of the garage. I think it's a little unique as far as the size of it, but I don't think that it is not, that it doesn't fit in the neighborhood. I would say that the wall window ratio, I'm not really, would you like to talk about the no windows, or is there a reason that you needed to not have them, or?
No, ma'am, there wasn't much thought put into that. It was more of the primary design, so I'm open to suggestions on or changes to that.
That would be my comment. I think that it sits on the original site, correct? And I would just like to see, I think that it would be more appropriate if it did actually look like a little apartment. So I would like to see windows on side elevations. Those would be my comments.
So you're in agreement with the demolition of the garage?
Yes.
You do not believe it is historic or could be repaired?
I think it's as much disrepair as many others that we approve for demolition.
I never approve them, but okay. I was just wondering your thought.
I mean, I do wish that we could preserve more garages, but I don't know if I think that our level of approving is gone, I mean, our condition levels have gone up. I mean, it could be a better condition and we continue to approve if people have a good idea. I mean, I think that, I feel like that to accommodate, modern use, that unless it's just if it's a good design for the garage and that fits with the house and the neighborhood, that I feel like that garages they just weren't built like a house. They were never built as strong as a house. The foundations weren't laid as properly as a house, and so, I mean, you just can hardly find one where the foundation isn't upheaved, and it's just a very difficult situation to resolve that all for a one-car garage that you can't get a car in. So I think that we've approved many others, so that's my thought on that.
In the past, we have gone out and looked at historic garages before we approved demolition, and my comfort level would be greater if we actually had a chance to look at the garage, not just in pictures.
I agree.
We've been approving quite a few without looking. So
But they haven't been historic.
Oh.
I don't think, anyway.
And I think so, but I think that if we're going to ask for further documentation, we should ask for an engineer. I think that that would just seem like a more unbiased opinion.
Well, engineer's report is just one piece of evidence we consider, and a visual inspection would be another piece.
I agree.
I do think we have approved demolition of garages that were, at least by everyone's assessment, historic without site visits. And I think we have approved demolition of historic garages without site visits and without structural engineers' reports. One of the revisions to the code in adding additional criteria for accessory structures was to kind of establish different thresholds for accessory buildings, that it does not necessarily have to be an imminent threat, so damaged that it's an imminent threat that cannot be alleviated without demolition. I think the intent was that remain as a very high standard, but that we be able to consider some other factors with accessory structures. So obviously, if the commission feels a site visit is warranted, that's acceptable, and I'm sure the applicant will work with us on that. But I do think the commission has approved some demolitions in similar circumstances without a site visit.
Maybe it was just me.
Okay. Any other further thoughts, comments, questions? Willing to make a motion without going to look at it?
I'll make a motion. Okay. Do these need to be separate, Katie?
Yes, we generally do a separate motion for demolition, and maybe look closely at the findings, since we did not recommend approval of
Okay.
it.
If I could, Catherine Montgomery with the Preservation and Design Studio. We did suggest some alternate or possible findings if you chose to vote in favor of or move in favor of one or the other items, and that's in our in the document that was passed out. So if you look, I think on page 4. Huh?
So I didn't get to the end.
Oh, I think they're on page 4, and I'm just saying, if you need some help working up some findings, maybe that would help.
It was quite a substantial response.
So what is the current opening? Y'all are going to talk me out of it. What is the current opening of the garage?
The garage door itself? On page 7 of 49, in the staff report attachments, we're showing 9 feet.
Catherine, would you like to speak a little bit about the unsound condition of the garage?
Starting from the bottom and working our way up, there's a couple of different factors. One is that it's not sound, and the other factor is that the amount of historic fabric that would remain or is remaining. There are cracks in the slab. You can begin to see in the photograph before you how the center part of the slab is sinking down. And then the stem wall, this garage actually has a stem wall, and the stem wall portions are disconnected all the way through and through. So it's kind of beginning to settle in halves from the front to the back. The roof itself is not the original roof. It's got new joists, new plywood on it, and you can see that there. The window, we're not convinced that that's an original window, and in fact it has a metal storm window on it. There's deterioration in the eaves. There's deterioration on the siding. The client purchased the home about a year ago. It's gone through a couple of owners in pretty short order and has a fresh coat of paint, which is kind of deceptive because the paint is there right now, but it's also hiding different levels of deterioration.
Is there removal of the driveway included in this?
It's just that front portion, which is kind of sloped, and it's poured on top of, or it looks like it's poured on top of something else that might have been underneath it. So just that front portion of the driveway, maybe I think it's 15 feet. And the rest of the driveway is to remain. Yeah, 14 feet, 9 inches on page 9 of 49.
Are we wanting to do a site visit or require a engineer's report before we go forward with this?
I say just make the motion and we'll find out.
You know, I honestly don't feel that an engineer's report, I can't imagine an engineer going and saying, it's fine. I mean, I think they're always going to find some problems with it because they don't want the liability of what they might have said. And I think this garage, Catherine, this material of the wood slat on this one, that is, you can purchase that now, right? You can
I'm
buy this.
sorry, what?
You can purchase this slat now, right? This wood siding?
Siding.
Yes, you can purchase that wood siding.
It is one piece that's grooved, right?
It's one piece that looks like two.
Right.
Right.
Because to me, you could spend as much rehabbing this garage as building a new one. I don't know. I have no problem with demolition of this garage.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion. I'm trying to do it the right way. Okay, for item, where are the rest of the items? Why do we have 1 and 4?
There were 2 other items that were administratively approved
Okay,
already.
thank you. Okay, let's see, which one am I doing for the, okay, approval of demolition of a historic structure? I move to approve HPCA 15-00079, 079, item 1, with the specific findings that, I don't know how to state this.
Mary Jo, I think Catherine suggested alternate findings are appropriate, in my opinion, page 4.
Oh, right, I saw those.
Did you see those?
Yes.
She has 3
Okay.
findings, you might consider those.
With the specific findings that the garage structure is not sound. To stop at that one. And that would be 1. 2, that significant portions of the building are non-original. Those would be my 2 findings. That where work will have, okay, what's my next? It'll still have an adverse effect. Is this correct? Yes. On the historic character of the district, but is necessary because of imminent threat to health, public health and safety, and complies with all relevant guidelines and sections of the municipal code.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Meacham and a second from Commissioner Massey. Now, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
I have a show of hands of the ayes, please. Okay. And a show of hands of the nays. Great. Thank you. All right. Item 1. Moving on to item 4.
If we require if we're asking for additional windows on the side, do they need to do a continuance to bring back a second design?
It's whatever the commission's comfort level is with, if it's something that you think you can specify fairly
Okay.
clearly and you're comfortable with that coming to staff, that's fine. Or if you feel like you need to see it again, then it can be a continuance.
Okay. I move to approve HPCA 15-00079, item 4, with the following conditions. Conditions would be that on the east and west elevations, that a pair of windows as large as the ones shown on the front elevation be installed. Location to be determined by the owner and designer. Is that enough?
I don't really want to say anything, but I feel like I have to. The west side would probably not be available for windows because it's within 5 feet of the property line, and I believe that the building department is going to want that to be a rated partition.
A what? I'm sorry.
What is that?
A fire-rated partition. It has to have gypsum board, and it has to, because it's too close to the property line.
Okay.
So we could do them on the east side, but we couldn't do them on the west side.
Limited to the east side.
Thanks.
Did you specify the door that's going to be on the back?
Yes.
I'm sorry. If it's in there and Katie, did you have an issue with it?
Yeah, I think the door was fine.
Okay,
That's
I'm good.
included, yeah.
I'm good.
Second.
All right. A motion from Commissioner Meacham, a second from Commissioner Massey. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
I have a show of hands again for approval. All right, and for a vote no. Great, thank you. All right, that item is approved.
Thank you.
HPCA 15-00080 at 915 Northwest 15th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Chase and Blair Schnabel by Sam Gresham, Architects, for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct addition elective, 2, construct patio with planters elective, and 3, install railing at second-story balcony elective.
All right, before we dive too deeply into this one, could we get some initial comment from staff about the 750 square foot addition? I know that you've had perhaps some conversation with council.
Yes, so we have a guideline that talks about setting some limits on the size of additions. Let me find the actual language here.
4.3.4, page
Yes.
5 of 9. Is that right?
It says that new additions shall not exceed 50% of the square footage of the footprint of the existing historic structure, or 750 square feet, whichever is larger. So that's kind of the first part of it on assessing the square footage. We had some discussion on whether that referred to the square footage of the footprint of the addition, but allowing that to go up multiple stories, or whether that was the total square footage of the addition split over multiple stories. This is the first application since that guideline has been in place to come up against that limit, so we haven't really applied it previously. We have some other guidelines for garages that talk specifically about square footage of footprints, but this just says new additions and then talks about square footage of the footprint of the existing historic structure. So I've kind of informally polled other staff in our division and gotten, I would say, a 50-50 split on how people read that. I know our intent was to keep additions proportionate to the historic structure, smaller than the historic structure. The 750 square feet limit is for a structure of any size. So I think thinking about that in the context of how we would interpret it with a smaller structure versus a much larger house that we have before us today. I don't know if that... So it's kind of up for debate right now.
Thank you.
I read quite a bit about additions this time, and I'm of the opinion that it means footprint on the ground. So if it was a 2-story, it would be a maximum of 750 on the ground and 750 on the second floor, because footprint is what covers the ground, in my opinion.
I think that was Rita's opinion also, was that it was limited to the footprint, is what they're talking about.
So on this one, so I'm not really, I was a little confused about, on the first floor, does the footprint include the open, I'm not really sure what it's, the open porch area?
The guideline says enclosed space.
But in this instance, it seems more, I mean, to me, this is just one of my questions on this one. It seems like that this one is almost enclosed because there's actually a building on, I mean, the second floor is sitting on top of it. To me, a porch, perhaps, I mean, this is just my interpretation, would be like concrete that goes, a patio that goes out towards the yard and is covered with a porch that's like a porch. This one, then, I'm not sure how many square feet we end up on the top, but I know in the second floor, it's over the 750. Is that correct, Katie?
think the second floor was labeled as 780 square feet. And then the first floor without the patio, the covered patio, was 750. I think kind of typical building permit evaluation, if it's open, even if it feels very enclosed or however we want to describe that. So I think we would consider that to be enclosed for evaluating the square footage of an existing structure. So I think it has to kind of be considered, we would consider it open for evaluating an existing structure.
Then are we considering the existing porch on the house? Is that part of the percentage of the house that?
No.
No, because it's open. Okay.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. My name is Chase Schnabel. I'm the property owner. And I appreciate Katie's comments on the complex nature of trying to understand this new rule. We talked about it and at great length. And, I understand that it's difficult to read, but for me, it makes sense when we talk about it being a footprint limitation and how this would be applied consistently going forward. And I think Katie also mentioned, looking at some of the coverage or the restrictions related to garages, and those refer to lot size limitations. I think it can only be expanded to be 5% of the lot. So when we talk about doing this addition that has a 750 square foot footprint based on how this guideline should be read, I think we are in compliance with that with the proposed addition that we have here. And as far as the amount of space that it takes up ultimately for this specific property, we're talking about 6% with a 750 square foot footprint addition. We're talking about a 6% increase in the lot coverage for the total lot. So it's relative to the size of the lot, and I think these pictures might help grasp it, but it's a very large lot, and it's a historic structure on that lot that's relatively small compared to the other properties. So there is a lot of room, and we're not proposing an addition that's going to create a crowded space back there. I think Angela mentioned the 25% open space rule. We'd have well over 50%, and I'm just ballparking, open space and tons of space in the backyard when you really look at this plan, as far as it is a large proposed addition that fits within these guidelines that have been set forth to make sure that we limit the size of these additions, to kind of help segregate and not diminish the historic nature of the property. And so I just wanted to come in and comment on my thoughts in reading this rule that we're talking about, which I think is really important how it gets read and applied in this case for the first time to the overall proposed addition, because it's kind of a make or break factor in determining whether or not this can be approved. So that being said, I'm not really prepared to specifically address the other elements of the proposed addition. I believe Sam Gresham is going to speak on those. Does anybody have any questions?
Any further questions for the
you can ask me to come up later and answer them. I just wanted to, if there was any feedback I could give.
I think from my perspective, I think the size of the lot and the size of the house, particularly in this case, lend itself to the size of this addition being something certainly palatable. I'd hate to get us in a bind later on where we've got a 1,500 square foot addition to a 1,500 square foot house, which conceivably could happen depending on how we think about that. But I think this particular case has some uniqueness to it that allows something of that size.
I'm not so concerned about the size in that I think if you take the architectural style, the colonial revival, and you look at the roof line and you look at the massing of the addition and the roof line it creates, I think that it's detrimental to the original building. From the back, it appears very large and it definitely changes the roof line. It doesn't really have a To me, the rear addition, the rear elevation doesn't really have the same, I'll say, window and door pattern that you would traditionally have on a colonial revival, which is very symmetrical. It kind of throws the symmetry off, whereas the other elevations, I think all are, just to look at them, are more compatible. But and then having that open space under there, it seems kind of heavy. Again, going back to what I said earlier about my comments on additions, then we have this very large brick addition to, even though it's a big house, it's kind of it's a simply designed structure. It just seems to overwhelm the original design of the house. A lot of times on an addition for a colonial revival, you would have like an L or something come off of it. Instead, it's expanding that into more of a big square, which to me just doesn't relate to the original design concept of the colonial revival.
I agree and share with all of Commissioner Meacham's concerns and comments.
The roof can be changed. Obviously, we can make an alteration to it. The shape of the building was generated by Sam Gresham, 400 Northwest 23rd.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Before we get too far down the road, just wanted to catch us.
I didn't know how that worked. The issue is simply to create a floor plan that suited the owners of the house and their lifestyle. We needed a living space, and we could not get it as far west as the garage doors to encroach on that backing space for those existing garage doors in the back. It sort of pushed it over as a requirement of maneuvering in the backyard. The addition is a family room. I mean, everybody wants one. We've added a family room. There's a study there that stays behind the existing covered porch, and then a master bedroom on the second floor, which is an addition necessary to a family that's growing fast. So laundry room upstairs. These are the features that it just made sense in terms of their requirements for the design of this addition. As far as the roof is concerned, that can be altered, and I propose to do so, I guess given Mary Jo's comments and Ann's consensus with that. But if there's we'd like to withdraw items 2 and 3, the railing. There were previously it was a wood railing out there. We don't necessarily need that. An iron railing in that location. And there's planters on the side. The planters don't encroach on the backing space, and it wouldn't be possible to slide this addition over to the west because it would get behind those garage doors and make the garages basically useless. It's necessary, I think, to keep it as far out of the drive and motor court area as possible. This house is really the smallest one on the block. The neighboring houses are, this one's 2,300 feet, basically. The house next door is 6,900 feet. It's the Mills house. Well, formerly, I guess it's Mike and Sandra Kirk's house. And that's the one to the east. The one to the west is 4,266 square feet. Lot sizes are somewhat different, but this still has a very, very large and deep lot. And given that, it's a relatively small increase in amount of buildable area coverage, lot coverage, that we've put on this property. So.
Any further questions or comments for Sam? Staff had also noted this is actually visible from the public right-of-way through the porch. Did I read that right?
There's comments from the neighborhood. Was there anybody that wanted to?
Does anyone else? Oh,
go ahead.
Anyone else from the audience that would like to speak on this application? We did have comments from the neighborhood.
Sam, what is the square footage on just one floor of the existing?
It's 1,200 or 1,100, it's 2,300, so it's...
Okay.
It's a square, up and down. What is that, 1,150? 1,150.
Right. And so in both cases, on the first floor, I guess that's part of why it's, maybe to me it's looking a little big, is that you have the very large open space on the ground floor, and then in order to reduce the upstairs to the 750, then there's a balcony off of the bedroom.
Yes.
I think both of those are just lending it, they've just increased the size. I think that's part of the problem. It's just grown, Sam. It's grown so big. Anyway, I think that I would have to say that I would not approve it like this. It just really needs. Do you have some other ideas after you got the comments from staff?
Yeah, we've got a lot of good ideas. My role is to do what my clients ask me to do.
Yes, I
do. We
understand.
talked about it. We talked about
I
these
understand.
issues. We went over these things, and
It's
their
difficult.
concerns were for the space that suited their lifestyle and their family.
Right.
I think for the most part, we did talk to Marva here just at this meeting, and I think we have some opportunities to address these issues. So I just like your comments right now, and I think I've heard them, and I understood them,
Okay.
I think, from the outset. So
I appreciate that, Sam. Thank you.
I'd then move to continue.
Wait, I think
I'll get
we've
out of the
got
way.
another speaker.
Marva Ellard, 1521 North Chartel. We are not at all opposed to Chase and Blair having it. In addition, we just think that there maybe is a more sensitive way to deal with it. And Chase and I talked yesterday, and Chase and Sam and Shannon and I have talked some today, and they seem very willing to want to explore options, but I do think they want as much guidance and structure from you all as they can get, so they go in the right direction. I am a little partial to Chase, and I'll tell you why. This house sat empty for years, and no one could buy it. No one could even figure out who to buy it from, and he was very persistent. It was tied up in an estate, and all of a sudden one day he announced that he had bought it, and it was probably empty for 10 years, 14. And so I think if anybody deserves to live there, he does. So we'd like to work with them and see what solution we could find, but whatever guidance you can give them would be helpful to them and to us.
Thank you.
I'm totally in support of a family being able to grow, and with the proximity of the homes on both sides being so large, I would like to see them have as much as they could have as far as an addition is concerned for a growing family. That's my feeling.
For staff, I was going to say, for staff, it would be helpful to know feedback, particularly on the portion of the addition that's proposed to be visible right now, and if that's a concern for the commission or not, so we can work with the applicant moving forward.
It's a concern, I guess. I think that you just introduce different design ideas that don't have it visible from the street at all. And I think that can be accomplished. It's architectural gymnastics, but that's what we do.
I agree. I mean, maybe since there's a porch on that side, the porches could be on that side. I don't know. I would just like to see the floor plan of the new design be more in keeping with the colonial revival idea of kind of linear and symmetrical and in keeping with the roof line. That would be my comments.
I agree.
As do I.
Chase Schnabel again, the owner. I appreciate Marva's comments. and everybody's input, because it really is, like Marva mentioned, we really are looking for as much guidance as possible so that we can do exactly what's necessary to maintain the historic nature of this building. You know, I grew up, Marva opened up my history. I grew up on 20th and Robinson, or 20th and Robinson, and then moved to 18th and Hudson with my parents. And the first house I bought was this house. So I've literally spent my entire life in Heritage Hills. And the house has been abandoned since 1998. I know that because I used to push my lawnmower before I could drive and mow the Funk's lawn next door to my house now. So we were very lucky to be able to get into the neighborhood, and now lucky enough to have an opportunity to do this addition and get everybody's approval. You know, talking about the garage limitation and pulling out, again, I'm not sure if it can necessarily be captured by the pictures on why we've got this offset going over to the east side, but if it goes over any further west, then you really would not be able to pull into that garage. And so that's why we've got it going out and going out to the east behind that existing patio. And understanding that we want to keep the visibility from the right-of-way as minimal as possible. We did look at the rules in the 4.3.2. There's an addition that says it's an acceptable location that has that offset going at the back of the building that would be visible the same way that we're proposing here as far as the guidelines. So we did rely on that when proposing this addition that would go over there behind the existing side patio and out and be, you know, somewhat visible, that visibility that Katie's mentioned. So I just wanted to highlight that, you know, we did as much due diligence as we possibly could to come up with a way to make this work and comply with the guidelines. And again, as Marva mentioned, willing to work and do everything we can and get the input so that we can come up with a plan that is going to, you know, basically allow my family to have a house that we can live in for the rest of our lives. So I really appreciate everybody's comments and input and the opportunity to come here and speak. And I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to say, but I think.
Which was the guideline that had to do with the visibility behind the
It's
porch?
4.3.2. There's a visual that has an addition. It's on the top left of that visual that's got the addition where it's on the back of the historic building, but it shows up over to the right and it says acceptable locations for additions.
So it's not going to be in your staff report. It's a graphic that's in the spiral-bound guidelines.
Okay.
4.3.2 says new additions must be planned so they're constructed to the back of the property or on a non-character defining elevation, preferably not visible from the public right-of-way. And we do have a graphic in the guidelines that shows additions at the back as well as additions to the side of structures set back from the front facade. So that's what we had talked about.
Correct. I just wanted to make sure to highlight that we looked at that and saw that as an acceptable addition, and that's why we were, you know, proposing to have this addition go over there and use that space with the access restriction that we have based on where the existing garage is located and accessing there. So that's really the main reason we're going, you know, over there, is not because of this planner issue, but purely because of the garage access, the existing garage access, and the understanding that this location of this addition, although visible, is, you know, something that can be approved based on the guidelines that are in here.
So we've talked about an addition that is more sympathetic to the colonial revival in form and in roof form. Did we talk about the material itself, the brick that had been proposed?
I think we have split decisions on that, so I don't have anything to say. I would say when we're talking about this that, you know, perhaps, you know, when you're talking about trying to expand that direction, when you look at the front facade, you know, and you have that projection to the left, the front facade, on the left side. I mean, maybe there's a way, and, you know, this was just a suggestion after seeing that. Maybe there's a suggestion to use that as kind of a symmetrical way to expand the back in a simplified version and get that, I see where your problem is. I think there's solutions. On the brick, I think that you just need to come up with maybe whatever you want. See, I don't know. I think I was thinking of, but when I read these, and we just happen to have 2 additions today with similar issues. So, before I spoke about making it look different, I mean, we want it to be compatible, but we don't want it to look like it's original. I know that seems kind of weird, but...
Yes, no, and I fully understand the difficulty of talking about making an addition that's differentiated, but at the same time consistent is a very difficult task.
And I think we would all have different ideas on how to do that. I mean, somebody might say they want the exact same size of brick. I might say the same color, but a different size of brick. Or, some people might say wood to use clapboard or hardy plank. I think that it's kind of a combination of a lot of things, depending on what you can see from the front of the house and so forth.
All right, any other comments or feedback to give to the applicant? Do you feel armed with the information that you need to move forward?
I believe we are. I don't really have the frame of reference to address a lot of the terminology, but I believe we have gotten a really good feedback on the issue that will really help us progress forward. And again, I appreciate the difficulty of having to apply this new guideline, and we worked really hard with Katie to try and make sure we could get this in front and make sure we can move forward and progress. So thank you very much for the opportunity to come in and talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can continue to August 5th or September 2nd.
August 5th would be fine. I think we can make changes.
Okay. I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
I move to continue HPCA 15-00080 to the August 5th meeting.
Second.
A motion to continue from Commissioner Bourne, second from Commissioner Zacharitz. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Let's continue to August.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on through our agenda. No other business today. Communications and reports.
Number of administrative approvals. We can answer questions about those if anyone has any. One withdrawal on there. No administrative closures. City Council, I think this is the same from the last meeting, but the SPUD 822 at 3012 North Walker in Jefferson Park is anticipated to be heard by City Council on August 4th, 2015. People should check council agendas prior to that meeting to confirm if it's on. SPUD 813 at 112 Northwest 15th is not moving forward at this time at the request of the applicant and owner. And my understanding is that it has not officially been withdrawn, but they're kind of on hold. They don't have quite the same timing requirements that we have as far as when they have to hear something the next time and move it through. But right now, I think they're hoping to maybe come up with some alternatives for that project.
They, the owners, are hoping to come up with
Yes.
some alternatives?
Yes. Planning Commission is just a repeat of the one under City Council. That was recommended for approval with some conditions to the SPUD.
Okay. Items from Municipal Councilor? Thank you. Thank you for being with us today.
You're welcome.
It is an unusually brief day. You've done well. So sorry to Rita.
Yeah, Rita was quite jealous.
All right, our next regularly scheduled meeting date for this commission is August the 5th at 2 p.m. in this room. New applications for this meeting were received June 30th, 2015. New information on projects continued from today's meeting to the upcoming meeting must be submitted to staff by 4 p.m. on Tuesday, July 7th. Have a good holiday weekend then. The next regularly scheduled workshop for this commission is Wednesday, September 9th at 11:30, 420 West Main, Suite 900. Any items from commissioners today? Citizens to be heard?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I wasn't fast enough there. Katie, is there anything we could talk about on the meeting we're attending this month in July? Is that something to be discussed now or later?
No, it's top secret.
It is top secret. I
No,
just
it's
let
not.
that cat out of the
No,
bag, didn't
well,
I? No.
No, we've had some inquiries from Gatewood about becoming a historic district of some kind or another. And so I'm going to a neighborhood meeting, and they actually asked George to do his Historic Preservation 101 presentation as well. So I don't think that's, I don't imagine the neighborhood's keeping it a secret, so I don't think we have to keep it a secret. But
I think it's pretty neat. And I don't know, Neil, have you any comments from a Gatewood resident?
Well, I kind of started the process, put the bug back in the ear of people that tried to do this 10 or 15 years ago. And now we have enough new residents, new home buyers in the neighborhood that do see the benefits of an HP designation. So we're ready to see if we can make it happen.
It's very exciting.
I want to kind of do an email poll of everyone on our next scheduled workshop, because that is the same week as camp, and that may be a little more time than you all really want to spend with us within 1 week. So we'll see if we want to move that to another day or reschedule. But
Thank you, Katie. Any other items from commissioners today? And no citizens to be heard. With that, I will adjourn our meeting.